I can't start the meeting without a quorum, so hold on just a second. Council members, please come back to the dais. All right, we're back in session. We are going to take up AB 16-014, consider dismissal of cause, number 15-2-01577-7, Bothell versus the Growth Management Hearing Board. And I will open up with a staff presentation by the city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I do not have anything to add to prior presentations to Council other than to say that our recommendation is before you. It's the same recommendation we provided at the last meeting. It is our recommendation to move forward with the appeal. We believe it does place the city in the best situation going forward. Recognizing that there's room for argument about that, and it's certainly council's call on this. But I do have Peter Eglick here to answer questions that you may have. I'm not suggesting that you have additional questions, but he is present and able to answer questions, as am I. And so rather than taking a whole lot more of your time and saying things that have already been said before, I think it'd be more helpful for you to ask questions and or direct us to address certain issues and or go into deliberations.
All right, thank you. Do council members have any questions? We'll start with questions. Nope. How about this? Oh, I have a question.
Yeah, Mr. Eglick, I don't see him. Oh, there he is. All right. Just a question. Do you believe that dropping the appeal would be counterproductive or damaging to the legislative strength of this council?
It's a nuanced question, but if I have to answer in one word, yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? How about discussion? Anybody want to go first? Nobody wants to go first. Councilmember Sandberg, thanks for being brave.
Did you want discussion or did you want a motion?
It doesn't look like we have a lot of interest in discussion, but I'd rather not do a motion just to make sure of that. But go ahead and, so if you have discussion you'd like to have, and then we'll yield the floor, see if anybody has anything else to add.
Okay. So first of all, I want to start off with acknowledging that what some speakers have said, which is nowhere else in the city do we have the kind of regulations, the low impact development regulations that we have in the Fitzgerald sub-area. But I would also say that nowhere else in the city do we have an environmental resource that has been recognized for years, if not decades. The high quality, high rank order of the ecosystem, the North Creek, Palm Creek, and Coal Creek system that exists there. And so it's a very unusual situation. And the city has recognized that through years of zoning in that area, whether it was zoned 1 unit per acre growth reserve to the zoning changes that have occurred over time. And I'm sympathetic to the experiment that has been conducted, the perception of the experiment that's been conducted in this area. although, I mean, sometimes I feel demonized on council that, or, you know, or previous councils, that we conducted these experiments without a lot of thought. And I think that the ordinance back in 2008, 2007, 2008 was an honest attempt to find balance. It was an honest attempt to find balance, and it was supported by the council and it was supported by the community at the time. But it didn't work, and I'm sorry that it didn't work. I feel bad that it didn't work, but I don't think that that is the fault of any particular party. And so today, here we are again, trying to make it work. And that's what I'm really interested in, is trying to make it work. And I also feel very badly that property owners in the Fitzgerald area have been bashed on social media. And I hope that'll stop, because we're all people. And if that bashing continues, we don't create an environment where all the parties can compromise. And so I feel badly about that, and I think it should stop. Some comments have been made that maybe some of us have been bullied by SAVE, and I think, at least for me, a lot of you know that I have very strong opinions and I share them all the time. And I can tell you that I don't feel particularly swayed by one side or the other. I'm trying to make a legislative decision that I think will be in the best interest of the city. We've heard from both sides that if the appeal went to court, that either the city would prevail or the city would not. And so a lot of it comes down to, for me, you know, do I believe the city will prevail with the appeal? And I don't think the city will prevail with an appeal, but I have 6 other council members who may feel differently. I have compiled a page of comments about why I feel the city won't prevail. And just so you don't think I'm making it up, that I have real basis, I have concerns about the city's argument that that the appellants have inaccurately or inappropriately argued RCW language relating to requirement of consistency between development regulations and our comprehensive plan language. And in the brief, the city mentions that there are 4 comprehensive plan policies that were argued, and only 2 should have been entered. Granted, if only the 2 would be entered, I feel like we have really lost the argument regarding natural environment policy number 13, which requires fish-sensitive design. And I feel like that particular policy was misquoted in the brief. So I'm happy to share my thoughts about that with people who are interested in that. But for those reasons, I don't think we can win the appeal. But more importantly, I don't think winning or losing the appeal gets us further to the goal, the outcome, which is a compromise between stakeholders on what can work in this area. I don't think continuing the appeal guarantees legislative flexibility, whether we win or lose. I believe that we continue to have legislative flexibility, that the new best available science report the study that we're having done, gives us the basis for making a legislative decision in this area. And I feel if we were to win the appeal and had to start from the starting point of 2163, we would be more limited in our ability to legislate, because we would have to make comprehensive plan changes. The change would have to wait until the annual update. So in that sense, I feel like our legislative flexibility is limited. Now, both sides have told me that they are willing to compromise because I've asked them that. I've asked that specifically. And for me, when I make the motion that I'm going to make after hearing other discussion, if I make a motion, it really is important to me that both sides agree to compromise in the context of the new best available science study. I don't know what's coming in this best available science report, but I'm committed legislatively to applying what's in that best available science report and ensuring that a compromise is met.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else have a discussion? Mr. Agnew, or Councilmember Agnew?
We've had a lot of testimony. A lot of it's been emotional. We've had an experiment in that area that hasn't worked for 20 years. Now we're in litigation. I've heard the city will prevail. I've heard the city will lose. I've heard the city will prevail from lawyers. I've heard the city will lose from people that are not lawyers. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not sure. I know that we have a good argument. I know that our legal counsel feels fairly good about this process. I think we need to get the best available science. I agree with Councilmember Sandberg, and we need to come up with SAVE, and we need to work out a compromise that'll work in that area. These people have been hamstrung for the last 20 years, and I think it's inappropriate. I also feel that if we drop the appeal, that the city will lose some of their ability to regulate land use in this city, and I think that's probably not the way we should go. My heart goes out to these people, but my heart goes out to all the people in Bothell. We need to try to make this right. It's not going to be an easy decision. Whatever way we go, somebody's going to be angry. That's just the way it is on this dais. I'll be interested to hear what the motion is, whether I agree with it or not. But we need to make a decision on this property for these people while they're still around.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to discuss this item? Councilmember Dewar, or Deputy Mayor Dewar?
I think we have a real problem in Bothell. We've forgotten how to collaborate and talk to each other in a civilized manner. And I don't think lawsuits help. And I just don't support this appeal going forward because I don't think it's in our best interest to continue to fight each other, call each other out in letters to the editor and on council. I think we're better than that, and I expect better than that, and I will be voting my heart, which is that we need to learn how to collaborate and treat each other civilly and be a community.
Anybody else that hasn't had a chance? Okay, Councilmember Spivey.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I agree that there's a decision that needs to be made for the folks up there in Fitzgerald. I also agree with there is common ground that we can get to. I agree with Councilmember Agnew that we do need to protect our rights and keep moving forward with the appeal as part of that. I also agree that there needs to be more collaboration and cooperation amongst all of us, and that that also takes an open mind when you do that. The thing about this, it's been labeled as an experiment, is we're trying to do the right thing. And, I think we got it wrong and we need to fix it. And by not preserving our rights can make it difficult to fix it. So I don't know what the motion will be, but I will be voting in a way that hopefully gets us to the middle ground in a expedited manner. I think that's the one thing that the people in the Fitzgerald area need, is they need this to come to resolution quickly. So I'll be supporting anything that helps get to the middle ground quickly, but also preserves the right of this council to legislate effectively, not only now, but in the future.
Great, thanks. Anybody else would like to go, or do you want me to take a shot at it? You want me to go for it? You want, okay. So I can easily say this is the topic that I've studied the hardest in the last 4 years as a council member. I've looked at this thing every which way I can, and it really came down to the end game for me. And the end game, really, we have, well, two options. One of them, we go forward with the appeal. The other one, we let it go, and we might have an option to do something in between. But the outcome really is that either do we like 2163 and we want it to come back, or do we do something different? And the way I see it is, if we move forward with this appeal and we win the appeal, 2163 will come back. And I can tell you, I was here when that was passed, and it was not balanced. I spoke out about it during my campaign, that I supported the Growth Management Hearing Board revoking it. I fought from the dais as much as I really could, as we were trying to craft that, asking for things that never really came about. So there's no love lost between me and Ordinance 2163. The other option is that we drop the appeal, or we start working from something else, and we start working on something very soon. If we won the appeal, 2163 would come back, and we would have to do a moratorium. At least that's what the city attorney told us at the last council meeting. I don't want to do that. The last time that was done in this town was when I believe it was a adult entertainment place was coming into town, and we wanted to stop it. So that's how frequent we are. We're not comfortable doing that. It's not a good thing to do, especially with new council members. It's something that is taken very seriously, and that's the only option that I see us being able to try to make this right, because I don't see 2163 working out. The other option would be to work with the parties involved, and I've done my best to try to hear and lend my ear to both sides of this story and try to understand where they're coming from. And I think there is the potential that we can get something more balanced, and it will hopefully address both parties' concerns, and that we don't have to go back at this a sixth time. We have done this 4 times now. We're contemplating a 5th time. And, personally, I do this professionally, and I can tell you, if somebody asked me, hey, should we do an LID overlay for this area? I would tell them, no, don't ever do an LID overlay, because it has caused 20 years of anguish for the property owners. It's caused 20 years of legal battles, and it's just not really been a really good experience for the city, or its residents. So that's all I have to say. Councilmember McNeil, did you want to have some discussion, or Councilmember Freed? You're the only two that haven't talked.
Sure, thanks. So one council member tonight made the comment that legal motions or legal action is not the way to resolution. The reality is the city is the one that the appeal was brought against. And when a suit is brought against us or you, the answer shouldn't be just to roll over and back down. You grab onto what legal advice that you have. I'm not an attorney, thank God. As Councilmember Agnew stated, he is not either. We have heard from legal counsel that we believe the case is strong. We've heard from others who believe it's not, and they're not attorneys. So for me, I have to listen to legal advice that says the best case for the city and this legislative body and the city itself, which includes 42,000 citizens, is that we need to be the one to set our agenda, our code, and how we move forward as a city. We as a council listen to citizens. As a majority, we can legislate that, and we shouldn't leave it to a body outside of our city to tell us how to make decisions. So absolutely, we need to take legal action to move forward and continue with appealing the appeal. And so that's my support. My vote is continuing to be with private property rights, and those folks that I'm looking at in this room that have come forward tonight multiple times for multiple years, who would like to be able to have the freedom to use their property as each one of us up here has the right to do. Thanks.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. We've heard a lot of testimony from a lot of property owners and a lot of community environmentalists over the past, I'll call it 30 days. And I want to say this cautiously, but I hear the word collaboration a lot. And as a newly elected council member, what I try to do is go into sort of the neutral opinion, and I tried to listen to everyone. And I tried to get the perspective of the property owners. I tried to get the perspective of SAVE. I did talk to developers to find out what makes the property desirable or not desirable. And I want to make sure that, that I'm open and transparent, that I've done everything that I thought was right to make sure that whatever decision I make, I'm making from my heart, and I'm making the best decision, I think, for my community in the long run. I'm not trying to make a decision that's going to take something away from us, because this community is as near and dear to me as it is to all of you. So I want to make sure that I'm open and transparent. I have met with many of the property owners, SAVE, and other council members. I believe we've talked about a possibility of an OPMA violation, but I will tell you that in my eyes, I was doing what I thought was best to make sure that whatever decision I'm going to make is going to be made for the best interest of my community.
Okay, so we can entertain a motion now. Councilmember Sandberg.
I'll make the motion that we vacate the appeal, Bothell versus the Growth Management Hearings Board.
Do you have a second?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dewar seconds the motion. Do you want to discuss your motion?
I think we've all spoken previously, but I'm making the motion because I feel as though our legislative authority is still preserved, especially in the context of the best available science study that will be coming our way. And I think this creates a context in which we can have a compromise agreement. And I will also be making a follow-up motion to that respect.
Councilmember Spivey.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to make an amending motion.
Go ahead.
I move that we allow rather than totally vacating our appeal, that we allow the citizens of the Fitzgerald sub-area, if they wish, to continue the appeal on their own behalf.
There's a second by Councilmember Freed. Do you want to elaborate on your motion?
I think we can choose to, instead of totally vacating the appeal, we can just step back, and if this is important to the citizens up there, that they have their day in court, which they've asked for, and they've asked for an impartial body, and that would be the Superior Court, to make this decision. And I think it's only fair that they have truly their day in court. There's only $10,000 left to keep going forward and finally get that decision from that impartial person, and that would be the Superior Court judge. And if we're not willing to go forward with it, then I think those people, if they're willing to go forward with it, then I think they should have the right to go forward with it.
So Councilmember Spivey, just for clarification, I guess I don't understand your motion, because do you know that the property owners would be willing to take that up, or?
No, but I want them to have the option to be able to take that up.
Okay. Councilmember Sandberg, you want to speak to the motion?
I'll be voting against the amending motion. I feel like that restricts our legislative ability.
Does anybody else want to speak to this motion?
Well, can I speak to my motion? You asked me a question, and so I've spoken to
Oh,
my
I'm sorry. I
motion.
thought you did speak to your motion. Did
You asked me for clarification.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Speak your motion.
I think that, one, we're doing a disservice by not following through. We've spent $100,000 in legal work that we're going to throw away. We have $10,000 and we can move forward with this appeal, and we'll have a hard decision from the Superior Courts. And if you want, that's what a waste of public dollars to throw away $100,000 worth of work and not get a decision. I can't think of anything more wasteful than that. And if we're willing to just step away from that, then those people at least have I think they have the right to have their day in court, and they should, hey, they help pay for part of that $100,000, let them use it. Let them continue the fight that we're not willing to take.
Councilmember Freed.
Great, thanks. I agree as well. We spent $100,000 as a city, and at this point, we're at the steps of the altar where a decision is about to be made, which we hear with good confidence could be a positive decision to continue to strengthen the legislative strength of this council. And if we repeal that decision or decide not to move forward, that could weaken the legislative strength of this council. I think we make the wise decision to continue with our investment and see ultimately what the decision here is within about 30 or so days.
Does anybody else want to speak to the amending motion? Councilmember Agnew?
I'll be supporting the amending motion. The people in the Fitzgerald subdivision have asked for their day in court. That's all they've asked for. And we're going to not give it to them at the last second. I don't think that's serving the citizens well. I don't think it's serving the citizens well to throw away $100,000 either, but that's another story in itself. They deserve their day in court. That's all they've asked for. They said that whatever that Supreme Court decides, that's what they're going to abide by. They don't plan on filing another lawsuit. They don't plan on appealing it. They just want their day in court to be heard. And I think they should have that right.
Does anybody else want to speak to the amending motion? Nope. So I'll speak to it. This has been in court 4 times. This is the 4th time. So it's not like this hasn't been to court before. I go back to a theory, or one thing I was told by an attorney, or a judge actually. He said, and he was a divorce judge, and he said that the best case scenario is when you have both parties leave angry, when they settle on a divorce case. So I don't feel like I don't support the amending motion. I think that it just doesn't make sense to me that we would then turn this over to a property group or a group of property owners. I think we need to take this up ourselves. I think it's a deflection. I think it's important that we deal with this as a body and try to get some resolution that's balanced. As I said earlier, 2163, I don't consider to be balanced. So I think everybody who's going to speak is spoken on the amending motion. So all those in favor of, let me make sure I get this correct, the city stepping away from the appeal and allowing the property owners to move it forward. Is that correct? With their own finances and.
I'm sorry. It would be essentially a motion would allow them to intervene in place of the city.
Okay, so the motion is to allow the property owners to intervene in place of the city. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So that is affirmative from Councilmember Spivey, Councilmember Freed, and Councilmember Agnew. All those opposed say nay. Nay. That's 4. That's Deputy Mayor Dewar, me, Councilmember McNeil, and Councilmember Sandberg. So we're back to the underlying motion.
Mayor, I believe I still have the floor.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
All right. Then I have it.
Just process, next time when there's a voice vote, wait till the end of the vote to announce who voted. It's more appropriate.
I have another amending motion then. I would move that we direct the city attorney to continue on with the appeal. My motion is to direct the city attorney to continue on with the appeal.
Point of order. So if the main motion is to vacate the appeal and the amending motion is to continue the appeal, isn't the amending motion out of order? Because the effect of the main motion losing would in essence be the amending motion.
City Attorney.
It's not, I'm not aware that it's out of order so much as it's just the flip side of the pending motion. So it's really a motion to vote on the underlying motion.
May I speak to my motion?
Sure.
I kind of took the underlying motion as dropping the appeal with the current outside counsel, and not wanting to waste $100,000 of the city's money. I thought it would be prudent then for the city attorney to take the work that the city has bought and paid for and move forward with protecting the city's interests, and at least getting the value of the $100,000 that we've already spent. I think that's the prudent thing to do with the city's dollars, as well as the prudent thing to do to give the people in the Fitzgerald sub-area their day in court.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to the amending motion? Councilmember Freed.
Great. I have a lot of confidence in our city attorney after knowing him for many years, seen a lot of good advice from him for the many years that I've been on council, as of many of us that have stood up here as well, and I think he would have the full ability to move forward and represent the city.
Is there anybody else who wants to speak to the underlying, or the amending motion, sorry? Nope. So the amending motion is to have the city attorney move forward with the appeal. Is that good? Okay. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
All those opposed? So we have yeses from Councilmember Spivey, Councilmember Freed, and Councilmember Agnew, and noes from Councilmember or Deputy Mayor Dewar, myself, Councilmember McNeil, and Councilmember Sandberg. So now we're back to the underlying motion, and you have the floor.
I won't be supporting the underlying motion. I think it's been pretty clear from my attempts at making amending motions that I value the citizens' dollars and how they're spent, and that if we've made that much of an effort, that we should continue forward. I also think it's in the best interest of the city as a whole, because it protects, we're trying to protect our legislative abilities for the whole city, not just in this one area. And again, I also think it gives the citizens of the Fitzgerald sub-area their day in court. I know there's a lot of things that we could do with that $100,000. We could, moving forward with this appeal, but there's a lot of other things I could do with it other than just throw it away. So that's why I will not be supporting this motion.
Does anybody else want to speak to the underlying motion? Councilmember Agnew.
I won't be supporting the motion. We've heard from all sorts of people. We've heard from lawyers. We've heard from citizens. We've heard from citizens that say that we're going to lose this appeal. It's interesting enough, the citizens that are telling us we're going to lose the appeal are the people that are suing us. They're not the citizens in the Fitzgerald sub-area. We spend a lot of money, citizens' taxpayer money. I just don't want to see it go to waste, and I think the citizens in that area should deserve their day in court, and unfortunately it doesn't appear that they're going to have it.
Does anybody else like to speak to the underlying motion? Councilmember Freed.
Great. There's obviously been concerns in the process that have been brought forward over the last 2 or I guess 3 weeks now. We obviously had a first meeting, a special meeting was called for the following Monday. We held that meeting. There's been concerns that there's open public meeting violations. So the process has been rushed. We're not listening to our own legal counsel. We're making decisions that are based upon our own opinions, and I think that's a dangerous action for this body to take, especially when it weakens, as we've heard, our legislative strength as a council. And so since the process has been violated and I think inappropriately run, I am going to be voting against the motion made by Councilmember Sandberg.
I think you spoke to your underlying motion, didn't you?
Briefly, but if there's a
I'm
second round,
inappropriately running the meeting, so I just want to check with you.
if there's a second round, I would like to respond.
Does anybody else want to speak to the underlying motion? Council Deputy Mayor Dewar.
I've spent a lot of time studying this. I've met with the property owners. And I truly believe that the faster and more expedient way to resolve this issue is to drop the appeal and move forward with getting the concerned parties together and working out a deal. And so I support this motion.
Does everybody have an appetite to go another round, or no? We have a motion on the floor to call for the question. So all those in favor of dropping the appeal, that's your underlying motion, yep. Say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
All right, passes with Councilmember Spivey, Freed, and Agnew in the negative. Councilmember Sandberg, you wanted to make another motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a second motion. I'd like to move that we direct staff to develop a public process that provides for mediation among stakeholders following the receipt of the best available science report and report back to council with such process.
I'll second that motion.
So I think the most important part of the action that we're doing tonight is to get to a workable ordinance that satisfies the needs of stakeholders while respecting best available science. And we've heard tonight that people want to hear what that process is, when it's going to start, and that's why I'm making the motion to direct staff to do that. I've heard people talk that we should start that now. I personally feel that's premature. Part of our charge is to consider best available science, and so to initiate the process without the parametrics report, I think is premature. And so I'm hoping that staff will be able to report that the parametrics report is nearing completion so that we can initiate this process as soon as possible. And I feel as though we have an opportunity to create an ordinance that would not require a comprehensive plan update. So it would not require waiting for adoption for the annual plan update. This is something that we could update at any point this year with updated zoning code.
Does anybody else want to speak to the motion? Councilmember Freed?
Great. Since this is a new motion and something we didn't get to ask staff any questions about, there was a statement that this wouldn't require a comp plan update. I'd like to ask staff, if you wouldn't mind, if that's an accurate statement. Mr. Blackburn, potentially.
I'll entertain it this time, but we typically don't do that in deliberation.
And if I could clarify, because the board has already approved ordinance 1988 through its initial denial of a SAVE appeal back in 2008, it's my understanding that the board feels as though the original ordinance is compliant with our comprehensive plan policies.
The original ordinance, but in order to make changes to it, it would require a comp plan change, would it not?
So, Councilmember Freed, since you like to insult my ability to run the meeting, you need to address your questions to the chair.
Then please, if you wouldn't mind, this is a new item. that wasn't discussed or advertised.
Sure.
Would you mind asking staff that question?
I did. Is city manager, do you have somebody here that can answer the question?
I'm not sure, Mayor, if they're prepared to answer that. If you give me a few moments, they can compose a response, having just heard it for the first time as well.
Okay. We'll wait.
There's an exception if the board remands and requires us to take compliance action. But in this instance, they've just invalidated our ordinance. So I'm not absolutely comfortable that we have that exception available to us going forward. I'd have to research that and get back to you. And the issue is because of the entire invalidation, there's really there's no compliance action ordered once the ordinance is invalidated. So we may not qualify for that exception.
Mayor?
Yep.
And staff can let us know at a future time, but the core of my motion is to direct staff to develop this public process, this public mediation process, to get this started. And I don't feel that staff's ruling on whether it requires a comprehensive plan update or not is germane to the basis of the motion. That's my opinion, but my opinion is that that the code revision wouldn't require a plan amendment. But the core of the motion is for staff to develop a process so that the public is confident that we are going to move forward on this.
I agree. That's why I seconded your motion. So is there any more discussion on the motion? Councilmember Spivey.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move this to a date certain to give staff a chance to respond to the question, and also for us to be able to, see a possible outreach program and for them to kind of come up with at least a framework of a plan. This is the first time we're hearing about it, and so I would move that we move this item to a date certain of February 9th.
That's an amending motion?
No, it's a move to.
That's a motion that, we can't debate. No, we can debate that, right? Motion to table is the one we can't debate.
No, this is not a motion to table. This is a motion to move to a date certain.
Right.
There is a
And
difference.
so we can debate that, city attorney?
Yeah, I think you could debate it, and I'm not sure if I understand the motion, but it sounds like an amending motion.
My motion is, it's not an amending motion. It's not changing the motion. It's to just move this action to a date certain. And the date I've listed is February 9th.
Point of order. May I ask that we take action on the main motion and then subsequently take action on Councilmember Spivey's motion?
I think that's the problem.
My
is his
motion
motion's
is on
germane.
the main motion. It affects the main motion.
Then it's,
City attorney, is his motion out of order or not?
As an amending motion, it's fine.
Okay, would you like to make an amending motion then?
I thought I was right with making a motion to move this action to a date certain, but I will phrase it as an amending motion to move this action to February 9th.
You still hold your second, Councilmember Freed? Okay. Discussion on the motion.
I just think this motion came up. We haven't had much chance to really get into it, or staff to give us a good answer on a question that was asked. And I think it's just doing our due diligence to take a little bit of time and get some feedback from staff and have the opportunity to get their response.
Okay. Councilmember Freed.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to speak on it yet.
Go ahead.
Great. Councilmember Sandberg, I appreciate the heart of your motion that you do want to work collaboratively with it. I did have questions of staff for one of the statements that you made, and I think it would be nice to have the opportunity to discuss it with staff to really understand the process to move forward. So the heart of where you want to go, I appreciate, because I think it's good to look at these property owners and tell them honestly that we want to work with them. That would be obviously my heart, and it sounds like yours as well. But if we can have the time to then have staff come to us and share details, that would be important. So that's why I'll be voting for this amending motion.
Can I ask a clarifying question, please? So is it the intent of the amending motion for staff to come back on February 9th with their thoughts on this process? Is that the intent?
It would be to answer questions that have been asked and also to kind of give a bit of a framework for what your motion is leading to. It's just giving essentially them a chance to respond and us a chance to take the information in. That's all it is. Just,
Because I'm comfortable, I mean, my intent was that staff was going to report back with their suggestions on a process. And I'm comfortable that it comes back at a date certain. That's the whole point, that the ball starts rolling sooner rather than later. So if that's the intent of your motion, then I support it.
It's just to
I was
let
just-
them respond and for us to maybe submit questions between now and then.
I was just confused. It
Okay,
sounded
let's
though,
not do the cross dais communication thing.
Thank you.
So we have, does anybody else want to speak to the amending motion? Terrific, okay. All those in favor of, oh, sorry, Councilmember McNeil.
So I'd just like a little clarification on the main motion and then the amending motion.
So the amending motion is to have this come back, to have staff bring this back February 9th with a plan in place and addresses the questions that have been raised from the dais. And then we need to vote on the underlying motion as well, but that's what Councilmember Spivey is asking for. Does that help clarify with the amending motion? That's what you're going to vote on first.
Yes, so I want to make sure we are moving forward with gathering information that will be coming back to us on the 9th.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay.
That's the way I interpret the motion. So is there anybody else want to speak to the motion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. So now we're down to the underlying motion. Councilmember Sandberg, I believe you spoke to your motion?
did anybody want me to restate it, or is it clear?
Yeah, let's restate it.
Direct staff to develop a public process that provides for mediation among stakeholders following receipt of best available science, and then by amendment, report back on February 9th.
Okay, so I'm not going to try to repeat that whole thing. Does everybody understand what the motion is? Yes? Okay. Any more discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, that ends AB 16-014. Now we're on to 16-015, public hearing. Oh, we got to open the public hearing. Opening the public hearing regarding the plan and code amendments to retire the University of Washington, Bothell, UW, Cascadia College planned unit development and amend the campus district boundary and regulations. And the process is open public hearing, staff presentation by Gary Hassler, the planning manager.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I don't have a formal presentation for you tonight. The Vice Chancellor, Anna Carmen of UW Bothell, would like to address you briefly, and then the consultant for the institutions, OTAC, would like to give you a more formal presentation. Before that happens, I do have a couple of housekeeping items. Council, I believe, has received a couple of emails from citizens on this item. I'd like to formally enter those into the exhibit, and I'll hand those to the clerk. Those are Exhibits 3 and 4 to this item. This afternoon, staff received some questions from Councilmember Sandberg. And Councilmember Sandberg, I'm not sure if you received the staff responses by email to those. It was fairly late, but
Well, my questions were late. They were this morning, so I do have them. I haven't had a chance to review them.
so I have
fully.
copies for the rest of the council if council needs them or would like them. Would like me to pass those out through the clerk? And then, Councilmember Sandberg, as part of your questions, you had a request for larger graphics of the current district regulations, so I've copied those for council as well.
So just real quick, can we not entertain a motion to extend the meeting? Because we're at 9:30 right now, and I'm worried we have 25 people that are signed up to testify. So instead of interrupting them, can we extend the meeting?
Move to extend to 11 o'clock.
All right, move to extend by Councilmember Sandberg, seconded by Councilmember Agnew. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
I have one additional piece of housekeeping. Councilmember Durr provided some questions later this afternoon. I apologize, but we didn't have time. I didn't have time to respond to those in time for the council meeting. We would be happy to try to answer those for you tonight if we can, or provide a response tomorrow in writing if that's acceptable.
If you can answer them tonight, great. If not, tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. With that, I would like to turn the microphone over to Anna Carmen, who is, I said, is the Vice Chancellor for UW Bothell, and she would like to make some comments to you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I feel like it's very important today to take a few minutes of your time. I apologize, I know it's late, and to address some of the issues that came during discussion of PUD retirement. I want to be very clear that when Cascadia College and the University of Washington Bothell put PUD retirement on agenda on docketing in March last year, it has never been the intent to use PUD retirement as a tool or way for University of Washington Bothell to build housing, student housing. However, it became the issue of PUD retirement is commingled with housing issue, and they became so intertwined that I think it's very important to address them before we can proceed further with our discussion of PUD retirement. So with that, I just would like to take a couple of minutes. When we asked to retire PUD, we did it together with Cascadia College as well with the city. And the primary reason for retiring PUD is appropriate and efficient use of public funds, including tuition. As you will be aware, PUD retirement is a part of the process by which we think we can go with campus development, still having public hearing, still having public input, but do not spend money on the processes that go with every PUD amendment. And as we told you, as you're well aware, every PUD amendment takes about $250,000 and about 8 months of time. So at the same time, I would like to apologize if we have not taken enough time with the citizen as well as with the council to address some intent of the zoning modification. As you can see on the screen, we ask, as you're well aware, to modify some of the existing zoning, which is the parcel to the west, and to make it consistent with the newly acquired property, which is currently being zoned as a general downtown corridor. We understand that that caused a confusion and actually misunderstanding of our intent. So again, we would like to emphasize that the University of Washington Bothell does not seek to retire PUD in order to build housing. And you're well aware that for development of campus, we do not need to retire PUD. However, we understand that asking to modify zoning on that particular parcel caused anxiety, and it became very emotional. And we heard our neighbors, and today I just want to state that we're withdrawing our request to modify zoning for that particular parcel. We will stay with the existing zoning. And the current zoning allows us several things. It allows to develop that parcel once we build with a 35-feet tall building stepping out 30 feet from the property line. It allows us to go as high as 65 feet tall building. However, we heard our neighbors, we heard their concerns, and we understand it. And we're prepared to accomplish our project with a 45-foot tall building. A 45-foot tall building under the current zoning will require 60-foot setback, which we will honor. And within the 60-foot setback, we will have a 30-foot evergreen landscape buffer. Our consultants would address in more details those modifications, but I just want to say that this is what we would like to do on behalf of the university. We also would like to invite our neighbors to participate in a building, helping us to build the buffer. We acknowledge that the buffer is not in a condition that the neighbors would like to see. We understand it, and we actually send an invitation today as well, as we're going to be hand delivering letters to the neighbors, asking them to be a part of the neighborhood group that helps us to develop that buffer. As you're well aware, by the city code, buffers exist, landscape buffers exist to separate residential neighborhoods from other uses, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Thank you.
Thank you, members of council. What I would like to do briefly on behalf of the institutions is simply highlight for you within the packet that you've received specifically the changes that have occurred from the previous submittal and the previous request. But before I do that, there are two items or documents that are graphics that are within this presentation that I'd like to enter in as additional exhibits. And I'll reference those as we come to them. So summarized in your staff report prepared by Gary Hassler, in the first portion of it are a summary of the changes we've made since the previous meeting. And this is all in a response to the dialogue we've had with the neighborhood, as well as hearing questions of council and trying to address particular concerns. Those areas revolve around setbacks and heights, specifically adjacent to residential only zoning. They relate to permitted uses that are part of the new proposed campus district, specifically retail. Also revision with regard to lot coverage and impervious surface requirements. And then in addition, there's some added elements that we're looking to incorporate into the interlocal agreement. Where the status of the interlocal agreement is that we've been having some dialogue with staff, and our intent is at the next meeting to be able to present an actual draft document for you to consider. Another thing that we would like to brief the council on is the University of Washington Bothell and Cascadia College reached out to the neighbors between the previous meeting on December 15th and this meeting tonight with an effort to invite them onto the campus, walk through specifically the area that's adjoining their properties to look at the existing vegetation in the buffer zone and have a dialogue about it. And so that was conducted December 30th. Invitations went out to all of the neighbors. We had 11 attendees as well as the mayor attended. It did create the dialogue that we desired so that we could communicate more and have an open communication. There were some comments and questions that are summarized here. Comments regarding ecological functions and the considerations of those when we developed the site. Again, the buffer and screening associated with their properties and what we might develop, as well as some good commentary about assurances about that buffer over time and how it's maintained and sustained. And then also there's just a lot of dialogue about future development on the campus. This is one of the graphics that's just been handed out to you that did not make the packet, but it's a reflection of photographs associated with that walk. The line that you see with the dots is just the sequence of photographs along the 30-foot buffer that would be between any proposed development and the neighbors on 182nd, 183rd Court. The photos, with the exception of the one in the upper left, all the photos that are of the landscaped area and the buffer, the property line with the neighbors is typically on the left of the photo, and you will see in many of them a cone on the right. That cone reflects about 30-foot distance from the property line, so you begin to understand the existing vegetation that exists in the buffer. And this vegetation would be, some of which would be retained while we would enhance it with additional plantings. So back to the topic of setback and height requirements. The primary change that you will see, and these are all reflected, I believe, in attachments 7, 8, and 9 of your packet. Just be aware that the earlier attachments are a reflection of the previous request. So there are some changes, and they're all in 7, 8, and 9. With regard to the existing campus district, which is really the main campus parcel, we are withdrawing our request to change the setbacks and the height component of that, and really just follow the existing campus district regulations. So no change, exactly what's in the current code right now for heights and setbacks. Those sections there reflect what the code currently allows. The buffer is there no matter what. With 35 foot in height, there would be a 30-foot setback, and for every foot higher that you go in height, there's another 3 foot horizontally that you need to set back the building. There was some questions as well about the parcels that are being proposed to be rezoned campus district from general downtown corridor. In that case, we have put a 4-floor overlay that was part of the original proposal and is still retained, so that we would not put any buildings over 45 feet or as what's allowed in the GDC. This is the same case here. We just wanted to highlight that adjacent to residential only zoning, we are not recommending any changes from what's currently zoned under GDC. There is specific setbacks, height limitations of 35 feet. If you go to 45 feet, there's a step back provision associated with that, and we would honor that in this 4-floor overlay zone. To permitted uses, there was a question by Councilman Sandberg about retail uses. And so we took a look at the pedestrian-oriented retail category to try to narrow some of the uses that might be allowed on campus. And that is reflected on pages 175 and 177 of your packet. It shows where we've basically added some retail uses that are not allowed on campus, mostly larger retail uses, anchors, and so on, that might be more in a downtown context. And then impervious surface, we also heard the dialogue regarding that, have changed our proposal from 75 to 50% lot coverage, although we're looking at that on a campus-wide basis, the entire district. And then the last couple of items I mentioned about the interlocal agreement in the dialogue with the neighbors, I think one of the things that was clear was just continuing that dialogue for future projects. And we would like to honor the municipal code noticing requirements that are associated with a notice of application. So in the future, when any building permit would be submitted, we would follow those criteria, and in addition, we would send notices to all residents on 182nd and 183rd courts. That goes beyond the typical 300-foot distance for noticing. And then lastly, as was mentioned by Anna, we would like to move forward more immediately with enhancement of that landscape buffer and in cooperation with the neighbors, and as early as this spring. And associated with that, you will see the other handout that you received is just a draft beginning to allow discussion with the neighbors of potential planting and concept planting for that buffer to meet the criteria that's associated with the PUD condition. So this is just a starting point, simply a discussion piece to have a dialogue with the neighbors. And so in summary, those are the changes from our previous requests. And so we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. So I had a quick question. It was, the previous speaker mentioned that you were going to do a 60-foot setback, but I think that's what you meant was a 30-foot buffer plus the 30-foot setback, or is it 30-foot buffer plus a 60-foot setback? Just to confuse everybody at 10 o'clock at night.
For a 45-foot building, the current code requires a 60-foot building setback. Within that 60 feet would be 30 foot, that's a landscape buffer.
Okay, so the building would be 60
The
feet from
building
their
would
property
be
line.
60 feet from the property line, and along the property line would be 30-foot wide landscape buffer.
Okay. Any other council member have questions, and then we can move into public comment? We do have 25 people lined up.
Mayor,
Councilmember Sandberg.
I have a lot of questions, but I'm just going to ask a couple if that's all right. Okay. So, first of all, I'm really glad to hear that you've listened to some of the neighbors' concerns and your proposal now reflects a lot of that. You know, that you're not changing the current provisions on setbacks, heights and buffers. You want to increase the noticing to neighbors beyond the 300 feet, early implementation of the buffer planting. I did have a question on revision of the impervious surface requirement. So the current PUD allows 55% lot coverage of essentially the Uplands campus. And so the PUD allows 35 developable acres. That's the current PUD. And then I thought I understood that your first request was that you wanted to increase from essentially a 55% lot coverage that's allowed now to 75% lot coverage. I thought that was that the first request?
That was the initial request, and I think it was some confusion with regard to how the lot coverage calculation is made, whether it took out critical areas. After reviewing that, I think we understand that it's more appropriate that number should be lower because it includes all the critical areas, the entire property.
So the current PUD allows 35 acres developable acreage. Your first request was 75% lot coverage, excluding the native growth protection area, which by my calculations would increase the developable acreage to 48 acres. And just to keep apples to apples comparison, because the current PUD does not encompass your request to include that 4 parcel GDC area, so just to keep apples to apples. The first modification of a 75% lot coverage, excluding the NGPA, would increase the developable acreage from 35 acres to 40 acres. And now the new request is to drop the lot coverage percentage to 50%, but include the native growth protection area, which would include the entire parcel. So that latest camper proposal, if I do the calculations, then increases the developable acreage to 63.5 acres. So under the current PUD, 35 acres developable. First proposal, 48 acres developable. And now this proposal, 63.5 acres developable. Do I have that correct?
So we're welcome to entertain how we measure these calculations. I think to bring clarity, there's no intent to pave the entirety of the uplands and create impervious surface everywhere. We want to create a campus environment for all of the students. I think the 35 acres, to clarify, has been a basis of ratio for vesting to stormwater regulations as far as no detention. Just realize that with the PUD process, every time that you come in with an amendment, you can actually request changes to these. So that was set at some point earlier on, based on what we felt was the likelihood of the build-out of the uplands area. But as you know, things are evolving over time. So anything above that 35 acres, the way we've been working with staff, if there was impervious surfaces that exceeded that and were approved through the PUD process, we would meet newest code detention requirements, I guess is the best way to describe it. So yes, there were acreage amounts established, but just realize there is a process through the PUD that you can amend those and you can change those. And it doesn't mean they would be approved, but there is a process by which you could do that. What we're trying to do with this is set a hard line. It's 50% lot coverage. And anything in the future has to fit within that. You can't change it along the way, or we're going through this kind of process every time we do. So we are trying to give a little bit more room, because this is for years and years and years. We're expecting this to not change. It's part of your code. But if you would like us to work through if that percentage should be tweaked and lowered a bit, we're happy to have that dialogue.
Well, I'm interested in that in the context of your stormwater infrastructure. And I'm not an expert, so I guess I just want to let staff know and you know that I'll be looking for more clarification on that, because on page 125 of the agenda packet, it says existing downstream infrastructure that was sized for build-out conditions of the original PUD will remain vested to the old standards. And so my simple mind thinks more lot coverage, but same downstream infrastructure. And that's a concern, so. But
Okay.
I've taken a lot of time already, so, and I'll follow up with my questions later, and I know we need to get to public testimony.
Any more questions before we open to public comment? Deputy Mayor Dewar.
I'm not sure if this is a question for your staff, but I sent questions this morning and they haven't been answered. So now that you're not asking for the PUD retirement, I have one last question, and that would be, under the current PUD, our dormitory building, is that allowable?
As was described earlier, under the PUD, you can come in with an application and request a project such as that. It has to go through a
Okay,
process of approval.
so it's not a, okay.
The PUD is designed to have some flexibility to it so that you can come in and propose amendments. Currently in the master plan, there wasn't a proposal for housing, but there's the opportunity to come forward and make that request.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Spivey.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Looking at your landscape buffer information here, I was out there the other day and visiting with one of the neighbors and looking out their back window, and the cones that you have out there showing the 30 feet and all, and I was looking at one of the cones, and it just looked to me like it was in a wetland. So my question, I don't know if it would be to you or to staff, is there wetland up there along that property line between you and the neighbors there? Is that considered a wetland up in there?
I can speak to the original survey of wetlands when the campus was originally developed, and there were not any in that location. I think there's some drainage issues that are causing that. There is a wetland towards the north end of that property. That wetland was part of all of the wetlands in the uplands that were mitigated for in the lowlands. Because no development has occurred on that site, it hadn't ever been filled, but it is mitigated for already.
So would those areas be considered wetland today?
I'm not a wetland scientist, so I can't answer whether it would be or not.
Right. And then the other thing that stood out to me there was an area that looked like it was, there's some econo blocks that were put up, and it's used as, for lack of a better term, a landscape yard where vehicles and bark and whatever is stored there. And the fact that it did look like a wetland, and the thing that made me think that was it looks like they have sediment fencing along there also, made me think that. So I'm just curious, and staff, they just haven't been able to get back to me about what the process was for permitting and putting that lot in there.
I can't speak to how that area was developed. I know that particular site was used several times through the course of development of the campus. It was often used as a laydown area and construction staging. So at what point there was work done to that site, I'm not exactly sure, to be honest with you. But it is something that just came up today, some questions about that. So we know it's on the radar of things we need to address.
All right. And I'm as well, right along with Councilmember Sandberg, I'm glad to hear that you're sticking with the original PUD on that area with the setbacks and the heights and all. And thank you for listening to the neighbors there. I know that, Mayor, down the road, I think it might be simpler, at least for me, to separate some of these issues and how we vote on them, as, maybe the retirement of the PUD as an item, and maybe separate some of these things out. I know that would be probably easier for me to vote on these things that way. And maybe it could be easier presented by staff that way also in the future. Thank you.
So that's a great point. I don't think we need to vote on whether or not they build a dormitory if it's within their PUD, because they would just go through the hearing examiner through the PUD process. Or are you trying, that's kind of what I understood you were saying.
That would be an option, to pursue an application through the PUD through the hearing examiner to construct the housing project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any more questions before we do public comment? Nope. Okay. Thank you for your presentation. So we're going to get into public comment. The first person is Jean Zorns.
Script. Let me just take time to publicly thank Kelly Snyder. While she's been clear as to whom she represents, she's remained genuinely friendly, informative, excellent at calming ruffled feathers, and always available and ready for a moderating solution if there's one to be had. I would like to think that the students at U of W Bothell and Cascadia are above the norm. 4 of my children graduated from Cascadia, 1 from U of W Bothell, as well as some of the staff that calls our hill home as well. So of course I think students and staff are practically perfect in every way. But just looking at the history of parking problems that we had and the things that came with it, the litter, the blocking of fire hydrants, urinating, disregarding of campus requests not to park on our neighborhood, we know that they're just human too. As most recently as 9 months ago, of all the crime that happens in Seattle, the U District ranks #1 consistently in residential burglaries. That's in the Seattle Times. A different university found that, quote, aggregating students in large complexes was responsible for crime in 2 ways. The large number of students encourages behavior in groups that individuals might not normally demonstrate, and it also makes residents prime targets for property crime, end quote. Another article has research showing that degrading of neighborhoods comes with student housing. I'm recalling that there has been some zoning discussions in the past that speaks to the limiting of the number of unrelated people sharing a home. I hope that someone in the city is generating a list to anticipate some of the consequences that come with hosting a habitat for a 500+ pound gorilla. I fear for our home value, privacy, aesthetics, the cemetery, growing rodent populations, personal well-being, and safety. You ought to be as well. Please ask hard questions of proving need versus want for this transient population. My recommendation is to evaluate the size, the placement, and the 24/7 support that comes with this kind of building. A 30-foot buffer can give a buffer for administrative and academic buildings. It doesn't with housing. Housing needs a large, healthy buffer to block views, foot traffic on all levels into neighboring homes, and yet stay open so students can feel safe. If campus had their housing more centrally located, they can self-monitor better without the easiest obvious bleed out into the neighbors. It would also make campus resources more available, security, bus stops, playfields, etc. It seems like the campus zeal to shove housing into the fringes is because it's less desirable to have it out in the open, to which we say, no kidding. Thanks.
Thank you. Next person is Catherine Podney.
Good evening. So my backyard will border one of the proposed building sites for the University of Washington dormitories. College dormitories do not belong next to neighborhood communities. Too many problems come along with building college dormitories next to neighborhoods. Some examples are noise, loitering, parking issues, traffic, just to name a few. Over the weekend, I was on the Seattle University campus with my daughter. Their dormitories live within the core part of their campus. Seattle University refers to their student housing as campus housing, student housing, not neighborhood or community housing. They don't infringe on the surrounding neighborhoods and communities. The UW Bothell wants to build dormitories to attract students, but at the cost of surrounding established communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person on the list is Janet Bailey.
Good evening. My name is Janet Bailey. I live in the neighborhood behind the University of Washington campus and have resided there for almost 30 years. I would like to propose a solution to building a dorm on campus directly behind our neighborhood, and that is to move the Truly House from its present location and garden to the proposed dorm site. And I say proposed dorm site, but this seems to be what the University of Washington is thinking. It would create the least impact on our neighborhood and allow us to continue to maintain the privacy of our homes. The house and garden fit nicely among the trees and grounds and would be the least invasive choice. This would free up the land where the house presently is to build a dorm or an educational building located next to the parking lot that they are now constructing. It would also exemplify the first principle of the 2006 Campus Master Plan, which is on page 4 of their master plan, to celebrate and respect the site's natural features. This would be beneficial to all. In the master plan, the area behind our neighborhood has been referred to as an overflow parking design from phase 2 all the way to phase 5 development, roughly from 2007 to the present. What has happened to change their minds? In phase 4 of the master plan, which is on page 18, it states, beginning 2013, the Boone Truly Ranch House may be relocated near the Chase House, which is located at the bottom of the campus. On our tour on December 30th of the proposed dorm land, we were told that moving the Truly House was out of the question. Well, it has been considered in Plan 4, in the phase of Plan 4. We've had a ballpark estimate of the cost of moving this house. It would be $160,000 to $180,000 to move the Truly House from the present location to the area behind where our neighborhood is. It would meet the present zoning requirements. Nothing would have to be changed. It would also allow the university to leave the last section of the forest remaining on this land intact. Parts of it are wetland, and it's a natural buffer. Dorm locations on other campuses such as Tacoma UW, Western Washington University, for example, are not located next to residential neighborhoods. The University of Washington Cascadia Community College is a wonderful addition to the city of Bothell. The solution of moving the Truly House to this location would be beneficial to all. Let's work together on this.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Next person is Natalie Sankowicz. Okay. Natalie, welcome.
Just like it reads. Yeah, Smith in Poland. My name is Natalie Sankowicz. I live at 10807 Northeast 182nd Court in Bothell. 10 years ago, when our children were just 2 and 3, we went in search of a new place to live. We wanted a small, quiet neighborhood with a family feel. What we found was a wonderful cul-de-sac with just 11 houses and almost as many children under 18. Had a flat landscape and backed up by a cemetery and a commuter college. We felt this was the home where we could raise our children. For the last 10 years, we've enjoyed a peaceful and stable community, 4th of July neighborhood picnics, kids' sleepovers, football games at each other's house, and on and on. Now, our idyllic neighborhood is being threatened by institutional housing. The people that run the University of Washington are intending to put in a 500-plus bed student housing facility just 60 feet from our neighborhood edge. I'm familiar with the threats institutional housing like this will bring to a community. I was 18 once. I lived in a freshman dorm at the University of Washington. It is not the controlled environment the people that run the university would like everyone to believe. In fact, I work as a wholesale commercial insurance broker for a living. In my line of work, I find insurance coverage for the risks that standard insurance carriers don't want to write because they feel they can't make money on them due to the high number of losses. I work on a lot of student housing accounts. Standard insurance carriers don't like to write student housing. Insurance carriers are interested in insuring risks that have controllable exposures. Student housing does not have controllable exposures. That is to say, the exposure they represent from year to year, from day to day, always changes. You have a revolving door of 500 new occupants every year. These occupants are mostly 18 years old, away from home for the first time. These 18-year-olds outnumber the authority figures in the facility very likely 10 to 1. There is no pride in ownership from these occupants. They do not intend to live a lifetime at these facilities. They certainly do not intend to raise their families at these facilities. The challenges inherent in providing insurance for institutional housing are assaults, vandalism, malicious mischief, robbery, attractive nuisance, and drugs, to name a few. I have an 11-year-old girl and a 12-year-old boy. They roam our small little neighborhood unafraid, and we don't worry about any danger they may encounter. If the university is allowed to build this facility, that will no longer be the case. I will be afraid for the well-being of my children. I will worry about the 18-year-olds partying at the end of the street. I will worry about the lack of privacy my children will have with 500 windows peering into our neighborhood. I will worry about the acquaintances of those 500 people wandering through our neighborhood. I will worry. If you'd like a glimpse into our reality, try this little experiment. Casually mention to an acquaintance that doesn't know where you live that the University of Washington intends to put a 500-person dorm behind your house, just 60 feet away. Maybe the people at UW pushing for this housing should try this as well. Tell someone, anyone. Take in their shocked and horrified response. The response is consistent. We feel that shock and horror every day now. I realize student housing is inevitable. I ask that the location not be 60 feet from my residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Perfect timing. Colby.
So he went home to take care of the kids. I have his. Can I just hand it over?
That'd be fine, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, just asking for the speakers who would like, when it looks like they're reading from a piece of paper, if they would like to submit it to the clerk to have it entered into the record.
Yeah, you can
That
have
might be
anything entered
helpful.
into the record,
So-
anybody that's here, so.
Yeah, any of the previous speakers who want to do so can.
You just have to hand it to the clerk, which is, she's looking right there. Next speaker is Rosemary Sutton.
Good evening. I am the new kid on the block. We moved into Bothell from Kirkland in fall, and we are enjoying the walkability, the astonishing new growth of Bothell, the closeness to trails, and a neighborhood full of interesting and welcoming families. Some members of these families have long-term relationships with UW, including as former employees or alumni. These new neighbours of mine are really upset. They believe UW has misled them, disrespected them, and even lied to them. The lack of trust has resulted in a lot of conversations, meetings, emails, and the filing of Freedom of Information requests. In one of the documents before Council tonight, UW wrote that they wish to maintain an excellent relationship with UW Community College. They wish to maintain the excellent relationship UW and Cascadia enjoys with their immediate neighbours. Unfortunately, UW does not currently enjoy an excellent relationship with its immediate neighbours. I've spent my entire adult life working in education as a high school teacher, university professor, and administrator in both a university and a community college. I am not naive about the complexity of planning and decision-making growing educational institutions have to make. But as the current director of the International Town and Gown Association, Kim Griffo, recently said, the biggest mistake a university can make is to run over a community. For relationships to be successful, communication is key along with professional courtesy. The tone of the communication and professional courtesy is set from the top leadership down. My neighbours feel run over, do not believe communication has been clear, and consequently do not believe they have been treated with professional courtesy. I appreciate the information tonight about the setbacks and the decision not to retire the PUD, but this left out the 800-pound gorilla in the room, which is residence halls. What's really sad about the current situation is that a compromise is available. While the neighbourhood feels somewhat threatened by the possibility of 500 students in a residence hall on campus, and what homeowner who chose to live in a quiet single-family neighbourhood would not have concerns, the consensus is not to reject any residence hall, but just the location of a residence hall next to single-family homes. Other sites are available to UW. At the City Council meeting on January the 5th, Vice President Anna Karaman identified 2 alternative sites that are not adjacent to neighbourhood homes. One of these, she said, was next to Discovery Hall and the other south of the new Activities and Recreation Centre. In addition, you've heard of the possibility of moving the Truly House. Finally, there are very large surface parking lots at the south end of campus that could be used for other purposes if a new parking garage were built. My request of the City Council is to ask for your continued help to ensure that UW does not run over this community and that Residence Hall will not be built in any location adjacent to single-family homes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I had a question. I've heard a couple times tonight that the college campuses are not requesting to retire the PUD, and looking at shaking heads. That is not part of the request. They still intend to request that the PUD retirements be retired.
So did you get your question answered then? By the
I just see the
heads?
nodding heads.
Okay,
I just
good.
want to have that clarification out there.
Got you. Janelle Lowen.
Good evening. Janelle Lowen. I also live adjacent to the University of Washington property. It's wonderful knowing, it's wonderful knowing that our very own Bothell UW is educating students about environmental dangers and possible disastrous tipping point. Every tree counts, every person counts. But for all the talk of environment classes and degrees at the UW Bothell and its advertised status as a green campus, the administration seems more interested in reckless expansion and maximizing grant money than in responsible growth. We know that anybody who purchased this property would have had to reconstruct North Creek. Let's be straight. The UW's Bothell stated reduction of energy consumption and carbon footprint is only comparing the buildings they have built with what they could have built. No real reductions have been made, and action is only taken when grant money can be won. Hand dryers in bathrooms and electric vehicles are good. Creating new degrees in environmental science is great. But they have consistently shown that environmental policy and stewardship of the land is just as important when there's an extra dollar to be made. Where is their integrity? Right now, there's a down-to-earth opportunity for the school's leadership to show intelligence and wisdom for everyone, not just promoting a growth plan and a budget. Saving the Jeff Truly uplands as a whole green space is what they should do, and certainly not cut down every tree and pave it over to construct a mini transient city in that space. Even beyond the environmental damage, a monolithic building built 50 feet away from single 30 feet, 50, 60, that's all hardly enough, from single family properties is just taking gross advantage. A 600-bed facility the size of a football field would make the UW and the surrounding neighborhoods a much worse place to visit or live, disrupting the area with 24-hour lights, harsh noises, trash, police problems, neighborhood intrusions, a sudden influx of more than 1,000 occupants, midnight garbage pickups, trucks beeping 24 hours a day. It would be a deadly poison. Put dorms somewhere else. Certainly not right next to any single-family neighborhoods. Once the beauty is gone, it's gone forever. Destruction of over 100 healthy 75-year-old 200-foot trees, numerous bird species including great horned owls, hawks, even an eagle's nest, which was surreptitiously destroyed, by the way, and other wildlife habitat, not to mention the livability of 20-some families who have been here for over 25 years. Put dorms somewhere else. The students who pay 3 times the tuition won't care where the dorms are located. Everyone does care about the long-term effects of integrity and trust, or the lack of it. There's always a choice.
Please finish your comments.
And this choice matters.
Oh,
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next person is Tammy, oh, I'm sorry, Norm Wright. I'm sorry, I skipped Norm Wright. I didn't want to skip.
Thank you very much, City Council. Thanks for hanging in there with us tonight so we can actually have our comments. I live in the Sunrise Valley View neighborhood, and I just want to say that what the UW Bothell and Cascade Community College do are amazing in terms of student education. I support residence halls, however, I do not support them on the property lines of the neighborhood. I used to work in housing. Students in general are very good people. When you get them in groups, especially larger groups, things just happen because they're not thinking about the ramifications of their impacts. Maybe it's late night, they're downtown Bothell having a good time, they're coming back, there's lots of noise, there's garbage, there's the service vehicles that are going to be servicing the garbage pickup for those facilities, as well as if they have a dining facility, deliveries, garbage pickup as well. And so I just want to just say that there are other locations on campus. It's whether or not there's a willingness for the UW Bothell to pursue those options. And then also in terms of the PUD retirement, if it does retire, I would hope there's another agreement in place in terms of an interlocal agreement in place before that retirement happens, just so that we can have some protections for the neighborhood in which we live. Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's Tammy's turn. Tammy Ergahart. Is that good?
So as you heard, my name is Tammy Urquhart, and my address is 10824 Northeast 182nd Court, and I am one of the homes that backs up and is adjacent to the proposed land for the dormitories. I'd like to first thank the council for their patience during the last meeting and respecting that this is both a very practical issue for the planning of the city and an emotional issue for those of us that are directly impacted. I would also like to just take a moment and acknowledge the new information that we got tonight. That is a lot of information to absorb, and I came here to talk about making sure there was a win-win solution, and I appreciate the fact that we have been heard by the university to a certain degree, and I just want to acknowledge that right off the bat. I believe that the city has worked hard to set a vision for Bothell that we need to ensure is maintained in the development that moves forward, including our neighborhood. Phrases like the following are included in that vision: that it demonstrates a commitment to sustainability through the actions of residents, business, and public institution, that it maintains strong residential neighborhoods, fosters a sense of belonging and pride in Bothell's unique and distinctive community, a feeling of well-being, and a commitment towards an ever-improving city of the future. We need to ensure that there's a win-win and that it's compatible with the vision above for us as a strong Bothell neighborhood and the university as a public institution. I'm going to skip some of this because it doesn't change, but my request for you on the council is to represent us in finding a win-win that addresses the following issues. If the existing PUD is retired, please don't let it be retired until a new agreement is in place for the immediate student housing needs and all of the development moving forward, regardless of the individual players that are involved. And that no student housing is to be built in the areas adjacent to single-family homes. No housing west of 110th or south of 185th. Currently, to our knowledge, this is the only plan that the university is moving forward with today. We see other housing options, as others have talked about, as serving students better with access to university resources without a devastating impact to us. Thank you for your consideration and support.
Thank you. Next speaker is Tony Dalzell. Maybe Tony Dalzell? Oh, okay.
Hey guys, thanks for having me, and I want to talk about what's going on at the UW right now. And I'm a direct resident, and so I'm dealing with them in my backyard, basically. One thing that's really going on is, like, we got 200-foot trees around the neighborhood, and they're just getting chopped down. And we got Scotch broom trees that are 15 feet tall, and nobody's chopping those down. And we just have all these invasive weeds that need to get handled, and they are spreading onto city of Bothell properties on 108th off of Beardsley is where you can really see them going. And there's a knotweed that's pretty big. And the Scotch broom is pretty funny because if you let it just kind of float around the neighborhood, a lot of folk will pluck it out and toss it, but some folk will start mowing it. And we do have neighbors that are mowing their Scotch broom to a 2-foot putting green. And we do got to stop this. And I'd like to see the city get on board with trying to get something in-house that would get it to get a handle on it. And it's what I got to say for you guys. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next person is Ann Agard. Okay, and the next person is James Anderson, or Anderson. Is that Anderson? Okay. James Anderson.
All right. Hello and good evening, members of the council. My name is James Anderson, and tonight I'm actually speaking to you as an alum of the University of Washington, Bothell. Last year, I also served as our student body president, and so it's a pleasure to be speaking in front of you all here again today. I'm not here to talk about dormitories, but I am here to provide some firsthand observation and some firsthand perspective into what we've heard here tonight. Last year I spent a lot of time representing our student body, whether it was sitting down in front of the Board of Regents, sitting down in front of our state legislature, or even this council at times last summer. And tonight I want to share a little bit about what it means to be a UW-Bothell graduate and what it means to kind of break away from this connotation that I hear being construed upon our student body by some of the folks in the room. So with a student body of roughly 5,000, 89% of our folks are from the state of Washington, and 84% of them are from King and Snohomish counties. The reason I share these numbers with you is because the children that have gone to our school are the ones that have been raised by this community. Of those, over 51% of our student body are first-generation students. 60% are on full financial aid. So these are students who are first coming here to get an education, first ones in their family. I myself am one of them too. You know, our students are not just waking up and going to classes and then that's it. Like myself, we've all worked full-time jobs throughout the entirety of our education. And a lot of them are involved in undergraduate research, community-based learning, all of these different things that are actually making a difference and turning them around as people and helping them be productive members of society. When it comes to interacting with others and being involved in our community, our students come from a place of incredible maturity. And I can speak for that firsthand. They've determined that by showing up to their classes every day, by being involved in community events and so forth. You know, the education that we receive at Bothell is the most powerful asset that we'll ever have. They're using it to be able to create connections with our community. Our students are figuring out how to discover a sense of purpose with themselves, and they're using it to figure out how they can become responsible citizens, both today and into the future. So as a graduate of Bothell, I'm passionate about the access, I'm passionate about the excellence, and I'm very excited to see the way that they're going to continue offering these experiences to students when it comes to their education here. Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm once said that service is the rent that we pay for the privilege of living on this earth. So if there's one message that I want to leave this council with, it is the fact that our students will pay their rent. They will contribute to society by offering service, and they will make sure to continually advocate for the success of the communities around us. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person is, I think, Diane White?
I'm Diane White. Sorry about the spelling. I had nothing to do with it. I own the property that shares a fence line with the college and have lived there for 30 years. This is my second plea to the council regarding the effects of the university wanting to retire the PUD and the effects that building a multi-story dormitory directly behind our homes will have on our neighborhood. For us, it is quite an emotional situation, as not only will this impact the value of our homes, but most importantly, the effect that it will have on the quality of our lives. I stated previously that for most of us, our homes are the largest single most investment that we will ever make or be able to make. Our homes are where we go to be safe, to be loved, nurtured, and is the nucleus of our lives. We feel threatened with the knowledge that the college wants to build a multi-story building that will loom over us, taking away any privacy that we have, not to mention all that goes with a large building that would house hundreds of young people that will have nothing invested in our community as they will move on once they receive their education. At the meeting in December, I suggested that the college move the Truly home to the location behind our homes, which seems like an excellent idea to us as that continue to be used in the capacity that has always been used, that it has been used today. And this way there would not be a multi-story building with windows looking directly down on our homes and onto our cul-de-sac. The natural trees and wildlife won't be as affected, and it will still provide a buffered area. When we spoke with the college after the meeting, we received nothing but blank stares. It has been discussed with college authorities since, and the answer was that will absolutely not happen. According to the college authorities, it is cost prohibitive. We cannot imagine that it would be cost prohibitive by moving it across the street. It would also speak volumes to our neighborhood in that it would tell us that they are concerned about maintaining good relations with its neighbors. We are all very well aware the college owns the property and most likely do whatever they want with it. Our only concern is that we do not want a multi-story dormitory directly behind our homes. And there's a myriad of reasons why, not to mention safety, privacy, noise, lighting, etc. We have completely lost trust in the college and their intentions. They are pressing forward with this location as the Board of Regents has passed the vote, and they're going forward with the designs for this location. Some of our neighbors were at this meeting and no public discussion was allowed. I would like to stress that there are many other locations on the campus that a dormitory can be built. But from what we are hearing, the college authorities seem to be set on this location, and we don't feel that they are being genuine and honest with us as to their intentions. We can only hope that the city council will take pity on us. I would like to thank the council for its interest in our neighborhood issues and consideration of our plight. We're just a small group of people trying to preserve the quality of our lives. In mentioning, I know I'm finished, but you brought up wetlands. zone is in the corner of the wetlands. I've lived there 30 years.
Ma'am, will you please address your comments to the chair?
I am to you, all of you, but it was, Dell mentioned the cone. So I lived there when Jeff Turley lived there. And that corner of his property, he never used it because it was a swamp. So yes, it is a wetlands. It's been there. I've been there 30 years. I've seen it. So I just wanted to answer that question.
Thank you. Parvin Pemberton.
Pavine Pemberton. I'm at 10825 Northeast, 182nd Court. I've lived there for 27 years. As you may have noticed in attachment 7 of today's agenda, when we asked the UW representatives during the site tour why the landscape buffer was not planted on the west border of the development reserve property, the present proposed site of the dormitory building, we were told that the PUD did not apply to that part of the campus since it was purchased later. If the PUD does not apply to the development reserve area, then building setbacks and height limits specified in the PUD do not apply either. This section of the campus and newly acquired properties that abut single-family homes need new specifications developed for depth of greenbelt, building setbacks, and heights. We want 40-foot deep green belts and 15-foot tall trees. We want 60-foot building setbacks and 2-story height limits because we would like to see the sky. A dormitory building on the development reserve section would be absolutely the worst choice for the residential neighbors of the university. The structure will cause loss of natural light, privacy, property values, and security, and add light pollution at night. The use of the building as a dorm will introduce 500 people who have no commitment to the neighborhood and no ties to the community to this area. The inclusion of a cafeteria will add noise and pollution from delivery trucks, staff arriving at 4 a.m. to prepare breakfast, kitchen odors, and waste pickup with attendant noise, odors, and rats. An administrative or even classroom building would be much more appropriate, allowing transition from single-family homes to high-density dorms. A majority of people are in their homes in the evenings and on weekends. Administrative buildings are mostly not used in the evenings and on weekends. This will allow the neighborhood a chance, a respite from university noise, traffic, and activities when they need it most. A dorm would do exactly the opposite. If a housing feasibility study is actually being conducted, as mentioned to us during the December 15th City Council meeting and noted at the end of attachment 7 in today's agenda, disregarding the fact that the Board of Regents has already approved the construction site, I would like to know why a lovely spot on the northeast corner of the intersection of Northeast 185th Street and 108th Avenue Northeast, for example, is not a better fit for a dorm. It is right on the bike path, next to parking, a short walk to student union and sports fields, and no one would care about the height of the building since it is totally surrounded by UW property. And the students will have a lovely view of the wooded wetlands. Thank you.
Perfect timing. Stephen Pemberton. Steve.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I think you know which particular ox is pulling our cart by now. It's not the building. It's the nature of the building. I came to this exercise pretty ignorant with several questions. And now, with a little bit of knowledge, I just have more questions. And I don't know where to find answers to. For example, the Phase 1 PUD, final improvement, says in an examiner's finding that all buildings will be built on the hillside. No mention of the uplands. It says on the hillside. Is that finding still in effect? When was the development reserve? When was it purchased and incorporated into the PUD? Is it part of the PUD? We don't know that. As my wife pointed out, we were told that it wasn't part of the PUD. That's why they never did the buffer. Was on that. And the environmental impact statement was done initially, before that purchase was there. So was that part of the environmental impact statement? Is it still outside the bounds of the PUD? Where are the permits for the infill of the land? They hauled truck after truck of infill into there. The staff told me they can't remember. They're looking for permits. They haven't found them yet. Some of the stuff I'll skip because it's to their changes. But one question: why are they attempting to change lodging and housing to permitted use and not to provisional use, which now must be compatible with nearby districts? How did the UW Bothell arrive at the conclusion that the reserve parcel was the most appropriate location for student housing, given the scope of the project? We were told as late as December 30th that feasibility studies were ongoing. What do these feasibility studies look like? What was the criteria and rationale for selecting and developing the reserve area for student housing? Why were other locations rejected? Why are there two different setback regulations in the document? If you look at agenda page 123, item 8, and page 118, item 12.64.207, they're different. The UW Bothell has told us that they're building a multi-story, 125,000 square foot housing with people who are a natural transient population. How, by any stretch of the imagination, is this deemed compatible and mutually beneficial to the adjoining neighborhoods? Requirements set forth in Bothell's comprehensive planning document. What are our rights of quiet enjoyment as property owners? What constitutes a nuisance? What constitutes taking value? What will the neighborhood role in the negotiation of the new ILA? We as a neighborhood request a place at that table or for our representative. I have more, but I'll turn it in. Thank you.
Yeah, please turn it into the clerk. Next person is Adrian Sowers.
Hi, I'm Adrian, and I live just across the street from the Pembertons. And after talking with Steve, I know you've heard a lot of facts and information, and we just felt it was important to have some sort of visual for you to see as an impact to all the things that we've discussed tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and put building. And how do I get this to come on? Can you see it? It's not. Oh, there it is. It's kind of faded, but okay. This is our new City Hall. It is very nice, a very large urban building. Now try to imagine a building 2.5 times as large, 30 feet from your backyard. Again, it's sort of faded, but this is the current view from Steve and Parveen Pemberton's dining room. It's not the neatest, but it's not their fault. And picture number 3. This is what it would look like to have a new dormitory built behind their house. It'd be just as large. And in closing, this is a general idea of what it would feel like for them to have that in their backyard. And just consider the scale and the size and the placement, and it really doesn't make sense. It's just not compatible. So, thank you.
Thank you. Will you please turn those pictures in to the clerk for the record? Next person is Rick Sowers.
Well, good evening. My name is Rick Sowers. I live in 182nd Court near the campus. I currently work as a lead appraiser and analyst for King County. First and foremost, we are very grateful for the success of the University of Washington Bothell campus and believe it is a wonderful amenity in our community. We also have to hold both the city and UW accountable for the expansion and future development adjacent to us. And we must protect our neighborhood culture and property values as stated in the 2015 comprehensive plan. And what that does say about the Sunrise Valley View neighborhood in a nutshell says to preserve and protect the character and identity as single family. LU-B5, it says to promote integration of housing and commercial development in locations where combining such uses would be mutually beneficial. LUP6 says to preserve the character of established neighborhoods and protect such neighborhoods from intrusion by incompatible uses. Okay. Concerning the 2.6 acre lot east of our single family plat, King County records indicate that the zoning was changed from agricultural to campus in 1997. When this occurred, we were not notified, did not know the history or reasoning behind the campus zoning and setback requirements. Though it is now apparent through lack of foresight or review, the current requirements, the current standards are extremely deficient in protecting our single-family properties from intrusive zoning. The campus and residential zoning are incompatible with each other. Having a large commercial, institutional, or dormitory type structure located adjacent to us would initiate a substantial loss in privacy, desirability, and home value. We would financially be penalized into the tens of thousands of dollars possibly. The project does not mutually benefit us, and this is not right. The stated so-called 30-foot buffer as currently described is basically a glorified setback when you consider that new construction could be set directly on the 30-foot line, and with the needed building exposure for access and maintenance, would leave very little area for plant shielding. I have yet to observe such a lack of protection between properties of this diversity in all of the municipalities I've worked throughout King County. And I believe the current 30-foot buffer should remain, plus an additional 20 to 30-foot setback, which has already been mentioned, and that no structure be higher than 2 stories. This is a perfect area for the Truly House, maintenance, office, or classroom buildings. The dormitories would be better suited on the east side of 110th. After all, would any of you in this room enjoy living under the shadow of a building 3 to 6 stories tall that covers thousands of square feet of land and is located 30 feet from your property line? In closing, I'm just about done here. I would, I respectfully request and believe that the current campus zoning should be amended so as to comply with the 2015 comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Just real quick, I need to entertain a motion to continue the meeting past 11 o'clock.
Move to extend to 11:45.
So I have a motion by Councilmember Sandberg, seconded by Councilmember McNeil to extend to 11:45. All those in, any discussion on the item?
Are we going to address the AB 16016?
The legislative priorities, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, we are. After this.
Okay.
All right, any more discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
All right, passes with Councilmember Agnew and Councilmember Freed in the negative. Next person on the list is Mary Ellen Green.
Good evening, and I'll be brief. My property shares the fence line on the southwest corner adjacent to the upper parking lot of the university property. We've lived there since 1981, before the university was built. We welcomed it as an alternative to Brightwater, as an alternative to the shopping mall that was planned there. We did mourn all the trees that were cut down to build the parking structure. We've endured every piece of construction that has gone on campus. We've endured the dirt and the noise. Currently, we're enduring the noise of the parking lots that's being built starting at 5 a.m. every single weekday. We endure the beep up of the trucks backing up, and we endure the lights in our bedroom window. We can put up with that. That is temporary. What is not temporary
is building a dorm in people's backyards. It will not affect me. It's down the street from me. But what will affect me is the next piece I'm opening up with, which is a parking garage that's going to go in front of our house. So my question is, why, if we have so many acres, why are we not looking to build in places that are not next to the very few neighbors who live adjacent to the property value? It just seems, I mean, I don't understand why, and that's my question to the council to pursue with the university. Why would you do that? It seems unconscionable. Why not build someplace else on campus for both housing and parking garage? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mike Rue. He left. Sandy Gwynn. There she is.
Good evening, Council. My brain is a little bit fuzzy. It's past my bedtime. I would like to be a party of record, and I'll give you my address, 19010 88th Place Northeast, Bothell, Washington. I do not live in the neighborhood with the impacts that the UW is proposing. And I am at somewhat of a disadvantage. I have a laptop and I tried to review the documents for tonight and I printed it out and I can't even read the print. It was attachment 6. It's a ledger size. And it deals with the retirement of the PUD, the preliminary, and then the, I believe, 7 phases after that. They put the conditions and they listed it. I don't know if anyone else had the same problem. But I hope that you might continue this hearing to another meeting to give people an opportunity to review the conditions. I appreciate the questions on the retirement of the PUD and some of the conditions in there. It causes me concerns that what I could kind of glean from one of the conditions was that the wetland buffer, the square footage of the building footprint, all the things that were a condition to being approved are now going to be in development regulations. Development regulations are very easy to change. The PUD offers a little longer process, but someone told me quite a while back that good government does take time. It's not always most efficient. You get everyone's viewpoints and you come to the table and you compromise. This is not going to be just about the university. It's a retirement of the PUD citywide. So I would hope that you will also be asking staff for what other PUDs are out there and how would that process work so that when you do make a decision, you really know the full impacts. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Gina Blum.
Good evening. I am here with my neighbors to plead with you not to retire the PUD at this time. We would like to see a fully
vetted interlocal agreement with opportunity for input from the public on the table first. I am very sorry to say that I can't trust the premier public institution in Washington to operate ethically without any curbs on what they do. We can't have that space of time between retiring the PUD and adopting the interlocal agreement. We, the neighborhood to the west, have been uninformed, misinformed, and stonewalled in our attempts to gather information. To a degree, maybe you have been too. For example, the map provided in your packet by the university is not up to date. I emailed you the map that was given to the regents for their approval. These two maps are not the same. Student housing between the 182nd and 183rd cul-de-sacs is already in the university planning approval stage. It came before the regents on Thursday, so they know darn good and well where they want to put that dorm, though they told us, we just don't know. We haven't decided. Well, you don't take it to the regents if you don't know. And you don't give the regents a map you don't give us. That's just wrong, and it's unethical. The building they're planning is more than twice the size of this one. And I was in here earlier today just to give you the visual from one flag to the other flag. That's 30 feet. That's how far from our fences they wanted to put the dorm. Now they're talking 60 feet. If you took the width of this room and added 6 feet, that's 60 feet. That's still, when you're looking up at the dorm, it's not very far away. And one last thing, just to throw it out there, they're saying if we maintain the PUD, it's going to cost the university somewhere between $125,000 and $250,000 to get all the stuff done for the new dorm, which is probably going to cost, I think they're estimating around $50 million. We, in the neighborhood, have figured out we're going to lose between $3 and $4 million in property value. We'll put up our $3 or $4 million against their $125,000 any day. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person is Susan Falley. Even at 11 at night.
People get it wrong, so that was really impressive. Well, I'm here for the same reason everyone else is. I am deeply concerned about dorms holding 500 rambunctious students being built within 60 feet of our two cul-de-sacs single-family homes property line. The same students, when allowed to park their cars in our neighborhood, regularly dumped their garbage, their cigarette butts, and their urine in my front yard. I was their favorite place to park. Our homes are not rental units. They're not unkempt homes. There is a sense of community in our neighborhood. We're not a neighborhood in decline. The second smallest home in the cul-de-sac recently sold for $500,000, and it was much smaller. There's houses twice that size in that neighborhood. The dorms will disrupt our quiet, peaceful neighborhood and decrease the value of one of our primary life investments. Anyone who believes, as the University of Washington Bothell, the UWB, folks would like us to believe that the UW students are anomalies and will not drink, smoke, or have parties in the dorm built adjacent to our community's property line are living in a fantasy world. There have been 3 conduct code violations between October 1 and December 1 as cited in the UWB's website incident report. They're required by law to put all those in there. I've moved into my home on December 28, 1985. Many of my neighbors are also original owners. We did not move next door to the airport. The airport moved next to us. My trust level of the UW, doing what they say, has been low from the start of construction on the UWB property. I and another neighbor who has since moved took a walking tour of the original cleared UW campus. We walked down the road that was there down to the house that's at the bottom, and we saw a huge eagle's nest on the ground. Our breeding pair of eagles have never returned. Now we have the UW Regents on January 14th vote to spend public money for a pre-construction budget and a delegation to select an architect and general contractor. The UW Regents approved the site, abutting 6 of the single-family homes in 182nd and 183rd Court neighborhood for a dorm. It's shown on their work in their minutes in their meeting. The UW representatives in our meetings told us that they had no plans in motion for that site. The UW presumes that they can dissolve the PUD, create an interlocal to their liking, and build a dorm 2.5 times the size of this building, 60 feet from established family homes. My request to the City Council is to keep the current PUD building codes in effect for now, and to put more time, thought, and study into the changes that will wreak upon our neighborhood with dorms adjacent to single-family neighbors. We would like an interlocal in effect prior to the dissolution of the PUD, but with current PUD building restrictions. I just wanted to say, I'll cut this short here, that tonight, that the ramifications to our lives from the building 2.5 times the size of the City Hall looming over our homes are vast. Noise, light, garbage, and lack of privacy, to name a few. Tonight, when you leave here, walk 60 feet out, turn around and see if you want that looking at you every day. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert A. Blum?
Very good. You got it right the second time. I'm not even going to try yours, Mr. Mayor, because that looks to be impossible. I'm Robert Blum. I too live just west of the Bothell campus on Northeast 182nd Court, in the neighborhood that we're all screaming from. I believe that building a dorm as close as UWB has in their proposed site indicates would be precedent setting for public universities in the state of Washington. I used Google Earth to look at all of our state resident campuses, and while I'm a human, I may have made a mistake and overlooked a dorm. I don't think I did. I'm pretty good at looking at things that way. And I could not find a single instance of a large student housing unit of the size that University Washington Bothell is proposing that is located anywhere nearly that close to a single family residence owner-occupied neighborhood. They're just not out there. In your packet, I believe, if it got through, you'll find a map that looks something like this. It is the best example I could find of a large student housing unit located near a residential neighborhood. It happens to be on the campus at Western. And it's upside down. The campus dorms are here and here. They're 60 feet away from the far side of the street, followed by a 40-foot buffer that's 20 feet high because it rises. It's built into a hillside. So the ridge is further away than they're proposing here. It's more heavily screened with trees. It's the unit itself is 20 feet lower on average than the homes that it impacts. Surely the University of Washington Bothell can find a site that is more appropriate than looming over my neighbors' backyards. Please, as a council, encourage them to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last speaker I have is Lelaine Leonardo.
Thank you, Council, for hearing us tonight. I am the last member of 182nd Court to talk to you tonight. We all were here. All 11 homes had at least one representative, and I believe most of us spoke to you. Sorry. I did not have a chance to print this out, so I'm running on my computer. So I've been a resident at 10819 Northeast 182nd Court since 2003. and found the quiet, flat cul-de-sac to be perfect and ideal. It's next to a commuter campus, but at that time it was a commuter-only campus. My husband and I have raised our family here. Sorry. The tranquility is in great peril right now with the potential building of a dormitory on the upper property of UW. This morning, as I readied myself and my sons for school, I enjoyed hearing the sounds of an owl hooting in the trees that loom out there behind my house, which abuts the cemetery. And then I heard the beeping of the parking lot being built through the hooting of the owl. This is all going to be replaced by the construction noise initially of a building going in here, followed by the noise of 500 college students. In regard to this noise, computer is not behaving well. I've been a college student, and the quiet nature of our neighborhood is not going to be high on the concerns of this transient population. There's going to be a proposed cafeteria. At what time will they be delivering food? What time is the garbage going to be collected? Already we hear the backup noises at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, but garbage is collected a lot earlier. Perhaps worse than the noise is the visibility that having the windows from a dormitory would have on the privacy of the single-family homes, including mine, which doesn't even abut directly with the university. Administrative buildings and classrooms that are used only days and weekends would be a much better proposed building there, not a dormitory that's used 24/7. Please understand, I am all for college education and for campus dormitories as they enhance the experience of college, but I am requesting that the location of their dormitories be evaluated and not permitted on this upper property. We as a neighborhood ask for increased setbacks, not reduced, and assurance from the development will not be residential or student housing next to single-family homes. We ask that you stand with us, the residents of this neighborhood, to preserve our neighborhood and balance it with the needs of the higher education. Thank you.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of the list. Is there anybody in the audience that hasn't had a chance to speak that would like to? Nope. Okay. So now we move into council deliberation and direction to staff. Does anybody want to jump in first, or should I just go for it? I'll go first, so it's Councilmember Sandberg doesn't. So our recommended action is to continue this public hearing until March 1st, 2016, but there'll be a motion on that in a little bit. So just to let you know, this isn't the end of the conversation as far as I can tell. One thing that's kind of struck me is that the traffic impacts of having 500 more residents in this location. So I'd like to get some feedback from the UW if there's been a traffic study, or is, are we requiring a traffic study for the impacts of that? I do hear your concerns. I would be concerned as well. I'm not quite sure what we can do about the university building a building within their PUD requirements that they have now. It's great that they have heard the community, and now that's new information that I got tonight, so I need to kind of go back and digest that and look into it. So I'm sorry, I'm just tired. I'll leave it at that. The last thing, though, is the construction hours. Now, we do have a regulation in the city for construction hours, and so I hope that, I imagine somebody in the staff have heard that there is construction activity at 5 o'clock in the morning, which I'm pretty sure is a violation of our municipal code. So hopefully that'll be addressed here relatively quickly. And you can always call the city as well and let them know directly, other than just coming to the council meetings. But obviously the staff are here and they heard you. So with that, does anybody else like to deliberate and provide discussion? No? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to continue the public hearing.
Move to continue the public hearing regarding the 2015 Planning Code amendments related to the University of Washington Bothell campus consideration of ordinance for adoption to a regular meeting of March 1st, 2016.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Sandberg, seconded by Councilmember Agnew. Any discussion on the motion? I'm not going to repeat that motion. Did you get that? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. So we're continuing the public hearing on March 1st, right? March 1st. So the last item on our agenda is AB 16-016, consider approval of the 2016 legislative priorities. And I will yield the floor to our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to say this is the latest I've ever started an agenda item, but it's not. We've been here before. I'm sure we'll be here again. Hopefully this one won't take you too long. We have annually established a set of legislative priorities. And this is a short legislative session. And in fact, we are, representatives of the city are going to Olympia next week. We have appointments set to meet with various legislators to support our legislative priorities, and hopefully I'll see some of you there. And this is an important opportunity for the city to be heard and to network with other cities and to try to do good things for the city. So we have I have prepared some proposed legislative priorities that are before you tonight. We're focusing on the Model Toxic Act, the MOTCA funding, which is, as you know, is a very important issue for the city for our continued redevelopment and of downtown and revitalization, and also the cleanup of our environment. So it's an extremely important issue. Also included a legislative priority supporting the Association of Washington Cities adopted priorities, which are a slate of priorities that are important for all cities, and we would like to be able to have council's approval to support those priorities as well. Additionally, I sent council an email regarding an additional legislative item that I'm not asking you to include in the priorities, but I would like your blessing in adopting these legislative priorities. If your motion could also include support for this additional priority, and that is the recreational immunity issue, and that's an issue that where the courts have ruled that we no longer can take advantage of the recreational immunity that's included in statute for our bike trails. And this is a significant liability shift for the city, and it is in fact would inhibit the city in establishing new bike trails and in expanding bike trails, because you'd have to consider additional liability load that the city would be taking on with those. So I believe it's important, and we have experience. We have a case where the city's been sued where we would have liked to have taken advantage of the recreational immunity, and until a year or so ago with a court decision, we would have been protected in great part by the recreational immunity statute, except for the recent decisions by the court. So I'm asking that you, when you approve the legislative priorities, that you also include some recognition of this recreational immunity priority, allowing staff to at least testify in behalf of this and support this when we go to Olympia. One other thing I'll say with regard to the legislative priorities is we could bring you a list of 20. I mean, there are many issues that the city are important to the city. But every year I give a little speech about how we try to narrow it down and really focus on what's of utmost importance to the city. And so that's what we've tried to do, to narrow these down, and I would like council to at least bear that in mind as you discuss what priorities we're going to take forward. We do need to have a decision tonight because of the short turnaround. We need to have these in place for next week when we go to Olympia. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or take any direction that council has. Thank you.
Great. Do we have questions for the city attorney? Yep, Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm actually going to be going down both days, the 27th and to 28th. And I think I've heard from other council members that they're going to be down there as well. So I'm wondering, is the OPMA, is that in effect while we're down there in lobbying in Olympia?
It could be. The way I don't think it's going to be, because I so far have only 2 council members one day and 3 another day, so that's less than a quorum. And and what happens is when we go to meet with somebody, if we have more than, a couple things happen. We sometimes need to split up because we have appointments close together, so we have to send 2 groups. And so it's nice to have people to choose from to form those 2 groups. And we always like to have a council member as part of every delegation. So it's nice to at least have 2 council members down there at any given time. And then the other issue is if we have had a few instances where we had one too many council member, and so we've split up and divided up the duties and not gone out to the same appointments together.
So who's going to be responsible for making sure that we're not in violation of that? Should we go independently or?
No, that's my role. I, along with the city manager, coordinate these trips, and I will be the sort of the tour guide, so to speak, and make sure we avoid those problems.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions for the city attorney? Discussion? Oh, Councilmember Spivey.
I was just going to make a motion, but if there's, looks like Councilmember Sandberg.
So in your folder, I'd asked Laura to provide you some draft language that I proposed. So that should be in your folder. If you could pull that out and take a look at it. I think it was emailed to you earlier today, but it was later in the day. So if we could look at the hard copy in front of you. So what I've done is, number one, I rewrote the section on the MACTA item, and it really uses all the language that Joe has provided for us. I just tightened it up. And the reason why is because when I went to the Sound Cities meetings, James and I both went to Sound Cities last week, we had the opportunity to look at other cities' legislative priorities, sent that to you in an earlier message. And for me, I think when we go down to Olympia, form and presentation are really important because it's like a cattle call. You want to make your legislative priorities stand out. And so as I was leafing through all these options, I looked at the city of Auburn, and the city of Auburn's format really stands out to me. And it just so happens that their first priority is also preservation of the MACA funding. And so I looked at their format, and I liked how it came across. So one thing I would like to propose is that the staff, kind of look at formatting issues and make it a little bit more eye-catching. So in Auburn's priority, generally they've limited their word count to 100 words or less. So what I did, does everybody have it now? They find it? So there's a email or a staple paper that says it's from Laura Hathaway on the top. Okay, so basically I just pared down the language in Joe's first item, bolded exactly what we're asking for, and got a word count of 74. So there's that suggestion of the language change, because on the second page, the city can go into much greater detail, which Joe has in the second page, but that top page needs to really pop to the legislators. So there's that suggestion. And I appreciate having very few items. We don't want to load them up. So we had the MACA funding, and then support of the AWC legislative agenda. I would like to add a paragraph on 405 tolling. We've had a lot of comment from our public about how important traffic and congestion is to them. And so I drafted a 100-word count, and then we could move the AWC priority, supporting the AWC legislative priorities, to position number 3. So then we have 3 legislative priorities. You've got a visual presentation that pops, and so those are my suggestions. And then finally, it would be really wonderful if our chamber could write a letter of support as well, highlighting how important the MODCA funding is for downtown revitalization. So if staff would, if with direction from council, would feel that that was appropriate to ask the chamber for a letter of support, I think that would make our position strong as well. That's all.
Does anybody else want to discuss the item, or should we move to a motion?
I'm just trying to read it really quick.
Take your time. Anybody else have any comments?
I'm okay with the language. I'll support that, as well as to see if the council or the chamber would write a letter of support. I'm supportive of that also.
You're supportive of Councilmember Sandberg's
Yeah,
change
yeah, I
of
think it's
language
fine.
and adding I-405 tolling
Sure,
above the AWC legislative priorities?
sure.
Okay.
Question for
Councilmember Freed,
Triss. Yeah,
you ask the chair, please.
okay, can you ask Triss if she is open to adding the community will lose a specialty grocer, drugstore, restaurants, and over 100,000 square feet of retail in rough count without a word counter? It seems like that would just add maybe 25 words total and get it to an even 100. It would be nice for the legislature to clearly know the impacts of that change.
I'm fine adding that. And then also the second page of our legislative agenda has a lot of, detail that includes that, so.
We actually, if I could interject.
Go ahead.
We actually have that exact language on the write out on the back page, the second page of the legislative, so that it explains the MOTCA funding issue. We actually have that exact language in that.
Yeah, I think it was in your original first paragraph.
Right, it's repeated on the back page as well.
I mean, the other purpose is, for us to, have a conversation point so that, when we're sitting in their office, we're not reading exactly from the front page. We can say, we're going to lose a specialty grocer, and then tell them, now look at the second page too. I mean, to me, I don't know. I don't want to be, show my skepticism. It's not necessarily a game, but it's a process that all the cities are playing at the same time, and so we need to do whatever we can to stand out and to make sure that it doesn't go into the mental circular file.
Okay, so we're ready for motion.
Another question for Councilmember Sandberg, if you wouldn't mind asking. What order would she be suggesting to go in?
She suggested having the MOCA funds first, I-405 tolling second, and then the AWC legislative priorities third.
Good.
Deputy Mayor Dewar.
What about the recreational immunity?
That is something the city attorney asked to add as well, so.
Right, and I'm not asking you to add it to our formal legislative priorities, but rather, and maybe it's a separate motion, I'd be fine with it being a separate motion, just council authorizing staff to support that issue to the legislature going forward. It's an AWC issue that there, and the city of Mercer Island also, and other cities are working on this, and it's kind of rising sort of at the last minute that it's coming together. And I think it's of recent importance to the city, and I'd like to be able to, if called upon to testify and share Bothell's experience and reasons for supporting it, be able to do that and do that with the blessing of council.
Okay.
And so a separate motion would be fine on that issue.
Councilmember Spivey.
If we're done, I'll go ahead and make the motion then. And then I would move that we adopt the legislative priorities as amended by Councilmember Sandberg, but also to include the ability for staff to support their recreational immunity, staff and council to support the recreational immunity that the AWC is looking for down in Olympia.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Spivey, seconded by Councilmember Freed. Do you want me to repeat the motion? Are we good? I think they're good. You're good, okay. Any deliberation? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. That brings us to the end of our agenda. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn is raised by Councilmember Spivey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dewar. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned.